This is a sheer make the playoff play. This is actually, maybe you don't even have to make the playoff, but just compete in your conference. Miami.
Yep.
They got the roster. They have it. But Mario Cristobal had the roster at Oregon. He didn't make the 14 playoff. Can Mario Cristobal show that he can take a roster that he's built that is exactly what you need, that has the pieces you need, and turn that into wins?
And it all goes back to the quarterback, I think. Like, they went out and got Cam Ward, and I personally view that team, I think as well as everybody else, views that team drastically different if you're playing Emory Williams or Tyler Van Dyke going into this season. Like, I don't know if we're talking about Miami, being a playoff team. They're probably in that, can Miami put it together and be a sleeper team if they end up having, not Cam Ward at quarterback. And the reality too, Andy, with him, like, he's there for a good time, not a long time. Like, he is there for this year. He is a rental. The iron is hot right now. If you can't capitalize with Cam Ward at quarterback for you and a year 3 roster and also a year 3 culture, when's it going to happen? Not that it's never going to happen, but it feels like this is as good a chance as you're going to have in the foreseeable future.
Well, and you've got Francis Malino on the offensive line. You got Ruben Bain on the defensive line. You've got these guys that you recruited out of high school that are absolute freaks that now have played in your system, that understand what's going on. You've added veterans around them. You brought in Damian Martinez, who was a fantastic running back at Oregon State last year. Xavier Strepo is back, who is a homegrown receiver that should be very productive with Cam Ward next year. Like, that is everything. Now let's look at the schedule again. Like, they're going to go into Gainesville week 1. They will be slightly favored. I don't know if I can pick Miami in that game yet, JD. Like, I'm not there yet. And that's going to be one where whatever fan base loses that game is going to be melting down. But if we look at this schedule, Miami should go 10-2 or 11-1. Let's be real here. There are very few excuses for them to not go 10-2. Virginia Tech could be sneaky good this year. Yep. At Syracuse by the end of the season with the talent that Fran Brown has brought into Syracuse could be a little bit tough. At Louisville will be tough. But let's be real. Miami has better players than 10 of the opponents on the roster for sure. They probably have a better roster than Florida. The only one where I'm not going to just say they have a better roster automatically is Florida State. But they really do. They have a better roster than 10 of their opponents for sure, probably 11. They should be 10-2.
And they probably, Andy, have a better quarterback than all 12 of those, right? I mean, if it comes down to strictly quarterback play, and
depends on how DJU develops. And,
sure.
Listen, listen. Graham Mertz, highly underrated. Let's not bag on Graham Mertz here.
I 100% agree. I am pro Graham Mertz. I'm pro DJU, especially at Florida State. But like, if we were to, pick a quarterback at the beginning of this season right now that we're like, yeah, he's probably going to have better statistical numbers than the rest of that schedule. I think Cam Ward probably puts you in position to have a chance in every single game. And so I go back to him, like, adding him to me really was like the amplifier on their season, and a reason why there is so much pressure on this year, on top of it being year 3, on top of all those young cats you just named they have on the roster.
So our guy Willie says, is your 10-2 including a loss to Florida? It would be a loss to Florida or to Louisville, I think. And then I have Florida State would be the other one, obviously. But I think that would be the most likely scenario is they lose to either Florida or Louisville and then lose to Florida State and they're 10-2. Losing to Virginia Tech, I think, would be one of the potential problems. And then Ferris in the chat says, at Syracuse, Kyle McCord will beat them, in my opinion.
Ooh.
That's right. Kyle McCord plays for Syracuse now. Welcome to 2024.
Here we are. Andy,
JD, I want to throw one more, and this is one that
one more thought I want to get your thoughts on.
Yes, go ahead.
On Miami. Let's say Miami goes 10-2, but the losses are at Florida and then Florida State. Do they still get in the playoff? Because at that point, you're 11-1 in ACC play. Let's say they lose in the ACC title game, so they're.
I was going to say, because they're not 11-1. Like if they're 11-1, or if they lose to Florida and lose to Florida State, they're in the ACC championship game.
Right. So let's say they go 10-3 and they lose in the ACC title game. Do they get in? And I guess a better question is like, are people happy with Mario Cristobal? Because on one hand, like, hey, you had double-digit wins, you made the ACC title game, but you lost the 2 biggest games in the state, and we may or may not be a playoff team.
I think they're probably not in that scenario. But I also think that the fan base is mad, but not pitchforks and torches. Like they're like, okay, that's progress. Next year we're gonna have it together because they'll have another good ride. Like they're gonna continue being aggressive in the transfer portal. They still have more years with these high school guys, and they seem to like them, and they seem to be capable of keeping them, of retaining them, and keeping them out of the portal. So I do think that would be considered acceptable progress, but it would not be satisfyingly acceptable progress because you'd be this close to making the playoff and you wouldn't have made it. But yeah, that's an interesting one because there's a couple scenarios in the ACC. Like I had a Dear Andy question about if Louisville went 10-2, would they make the college football playoff? And I was like, there's no way Louisville is 10-2 in that scenario. They're either 10-3 or 11-2. And if they're 11-2, they're the ACC champ and they're in the playoff. If they're 10-3, they're not. They lost the ACC championship game and they're not. Like it's just that's how that's going to work probably. Now for Miami, they could actually conceivably be 11-1, and then play in the ACC championship game and lose. I mean, what if it's this, JD? What if Miami loses to Florida State in the regular season and then plays Florida or beats Florida State? Or let's say lose to Florida, beat Florida State in the regular season, and lose to Florida State in the ACC championship game. I think they would both make the playoff in that scenario.
I think you're right. That would be, I mean, the vibes would be high at that point too, is you're like, it's the Alonzo Mourning gif where it's like, lost to Florida State, made the college football playoff.
but you also beat Florida State in the other game. So you have that one. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.